everybody, and welcome back to your Inner Journey weather forecast, week of July 11th to the 17th. And this is an exciting time over the summer. We can tell it's an exciting time as the pandemic kind of winds down in the United States. A lot of people are going out, a lot of people are socializing. This is an exciting time being reflected in the astrological perspective in even more facets. And those facets can help us in our inner journeys this week, our spiritual practices, psychedelic journeys. So let's have a look at what's going on this week. And this week, as we can see in Archetypal Explorer, we have a Venus-Mars conjunction that's happening. It's actually pretty much exact right now. This program, Archetypal Explorer, has it going exact midweek, but it's really been exact, and it's exact. In fact, last night, which was Sunday night, there was such an exact conjunction of Mars and Venus and the moon. So if you're in a place where there's clear skies, you might have seen that. And that's the most tightest conjunction of those three celestial bodies that has been for those three together in a few years and will be for several more years. So if you saw that, consider yourself lucky. It's the tightest conjunction there. The moon, of course, moving quickly. So the moon has left that conjunction. That leaves us with the Venus-Mars conjunction to talk about. And in general terms, that shows up as the Mars energy, which is forceful action, and the Venus energy, which is the association with pleasure, harmony, come together. And we oftentimes see socializing, an impulse to socialize at that time, because Venus has to do with the pleasure of the heart, the joys of warmth, of kind of joyful sharing of positive emotions with others, and Mars kind of activates it. Mars is the great vitalizer, activator, and so makes us want to get the blood pumping and get out and socialize. Always very fascinating to see how this shows up in just everyday life, never mind psychedelic journeys, but in everyday life. In these conjunctions, these aspects, these alignments of Venus and Mars, we tend to see it show up in dancing. We see people dancing, a lot of dancing going on. We see a lot of socializing happening. It can show up in different ways, and it's fun to see how the different ways it's going to show up in your life. For me, what I noticed was that I witnessed recently a lot of people coming together in friendship around sport events. So the sport events is Mars. That's the competitiveness and the athleticism, and the kind of, people are there and they're cheering and they're shouting and they're getting kind of riled up. It's the Mars energy, but everybody's there to enjoy the company of others. That's Venus. So that's the way it showed up for me. I saw a lot of people watching UFC. I saw a lot of people watching soccer, football. So Venus-Mars conjunction in the psychedelic journeys, it can show up as a desire to want to be in psychedelic journeys or spiritual practice that are social. So maybe going to a ceremony in which there are other people, or having a psychedelic journey yourself and then wanting to socialize, wanting to engage, awaken the social butterfly within, dance. There are ceremonies in which dancing is actually part of it, singing is a part of it. There's a kind of an active artistic expression component there, and socializing is a part of it. Group sharing, group socializing, group dancing, whatever it might be. I mean, in fact, gigantic dance parties, EDM dance parties, or Burning Man, or any type of major dance party could even be seen in a ceremonial light. It could be an inflection of these divine energies into a group experience in which they can be expressed through all that movement, dancing, socializing. So that's how that can show up in our journeys this week. I want to kind of encapsulate this, though, into larger alignments, which have to do with Saturn and Uranus. So let's look at Saturn, Uranus here. Saturn, Uranus, and Jupiter. Last week, this Venus and Mars was really tightly linked with Saturn and Uranus. Next week, this Venus and Mars will be very kind of becoming more tightly linked up with Jupiter. So last week, what was the experiences you had? Write about it in the comments, because the Venus-Uranus is a super duper dynamic tension there. The Saturn-Uranus is a super dynamic tension there. When you have Venus and Mars there with it, it gets really very dynamic, super dynamic energies. Venus there with Saturn Uranus can be like a kind of you know, like sudden maturity, sudden Uranus maturity, Saturn in love relationships, Venus friendships, sudden breaks. That can be there too. Sudden changes, sudden left turns. This is very possible with the Venus in the Saturn Uranus conjunction. With Mars there, sudden unexpected anger or sudden unexpected kind of forceful action. Conversely, it could be holding back and reserving forceful action and anger for a later sense of release. That's also Saturn Uranus. So it's really dynamic qualities here. We can see it, the UFC fight. There was the headlining fight of this past weekend. Conor McGregor experienced a sudden break in his leg. And that's a very Mars in Venus in the Saturn Uranus square. So with the sudden breaks, the sudden energies. So Venus and Mars are still there. They're still with Saturn and Uranus, but as we transition into the weeks going ahead, it's going to begin to transition over to Jupiter. You can see and hear. So here's Venus, Mars, and the moon. The moon's just moving out of that conjunction, but still there. And they're still, you can see the red lines. They're still very connected with Uranus. They're still in opposition to Saturn. But as they move forward, they're going to become more tightly aspecting, aligning with Jupiter, which is a different energy. It's a more celebratory energy. It doesn't have that dynamic tension of feeling like sudden breaks, sudden shifts. So how does that show up in psychedelic sessions? So for instance, the Saturn Uranus in psychedelic sessions would be, we take that energy inside and we feel a sudden break from the past. We realize we have to let something go, or we feel a sudden maturity. We realize that we have matured to a next level, and that's part of letting the past go. That can often happen, a sudden sense of responsibility, like, wow, I've cultivated this inner authority and I'm now at the next level. That's very Saturn Uranus. Saturn, the maturity; Uranus, the unexpected, like the unexpected achievement of maturity. Like, whoa, I'm on the next level. As we go into Jupiter, how that shows up with the Mars Venus with Jupiter in the inner journeys, it's just more of a kind of celebratory energy, a sense of enjoyment of life, a sense there might be a desire to kind of expand outward again, especially after a pandemic being so restricted. There can be a sense of wanting to expand outward again. And that can be through learning, through dancing, different cultural music, traveling, celebrating. Jupiter is a very positive celebrating air. So we'll talk about that next week. But for now, I got two questions for you. One is, what happened last week? Write about it in the comments. I want to hear how that Saturn Uranus showed up with the Mars and Venus. And two, do you want to learn how to do this type of forecasting yourself so that you can just naturally have your own practice of every week? You look at the transits and you just know the rhythm of the unfolding of the divine orchestration of life. And then you just go with it. I go with it every week. It's been so helpful. I mean, there's so many things I've dodged knowing this, and particularly with planning psychedelic journeys, and so many things I've been able to seize, so many kind of fruitful times I've been able to seize knowing this. I wouldn't give it up for anything. And I always use it when planning any type of spiritual practice, but even in everyday life. And would you like to learn how to guide others? Look at their birth chart, be able to point out, bring the light of clarity to kind of the knots of confusion in their lives. And in your own life, bring the light of clarity of looking at your own birth chart into the knots of confusion or some type of lack of clarity in your life. I have a Fundamentals of Archetypal Astrology course coming up. It's called the Fundamentals of Archetypal Astrology as a Spiritual Practice. I'll include the link below. Check it out. Thank you so much for being here. I look forward to being with you next week. We're going to talk about the Venus-Mars conjunction opposite Jupiter. And I want to hear from you guys how you're watching that transition into more and more openness and more kind of celebratory energy and going out into the world and expanding. Okay, so thank you so much for being with me here today, and I'll see you next week. Have a great week.